Yo, lifelong learner Blueroot here with episode 8 of the Azure AZ-104 exam prep series, implementing virtual networking. Thanks for tuning in. In this episode, we're going to explore the virtual networking capabilities in Azure. A virtual network, or a VNet, is a representation of your own network in the cloud. It's a logical isolation of the Azure cloud dedicated to your subscription. There are so many cool and useful ways to use VNets. You can use them to provision VPNs, you can link them together with other VNets, or even with your on-premise IT infrastructure to create a hybrid solution, and many other cool use cases. The objectives that we will accomplish in this video are to create and configure a virtual network, deploy virtual machines into that virtual network, configure both private and public IP addresses of those Azure virtual machines, configure network security groups, and then configure both Azure DNS for external and internal name resolution. So let's get right into it. We plan to create a virtual network that will host a couple of virtual machines. Since we intend to implement a network-based segmentation, we will deploy them into different subnets of the virtual network. We're also going to make sure that their private and public IP addresses are static addresses, so they will not change over time. We'll also fulfill some security requirements and take some security measures to protect our public-facing endpoints. At the end, we will implement DNS name resolution for our machines both within the virtual network and from the internet. Let's start off by creating a virtual network with multiple subnets by using the Azure portal. In the Azure portal, just search for virtual networks, create virtual network. I'm going to create a new resource group for my new episode, episode 8 resource group. And for the name of the VNet, I'm going to stick to the same naming convention. And then of course for the region, just click the region that's closest to you. Now for the IP address space, I'm going to leave it as 10.0.0.0/16. I'm not going to go into networking or subnetting in this episode or this series for that matter. It's expected of you to have a basic understanding of networking. And the new subnet, I'm just going to trash that subnet. And I'm just going to call this new subnet subnet 1. Simple as that. And give it that subnet range. And there you go. For the security tab and tags, I'm just going to leave them as they are. Review that virtual network and create it. It should only take a minute or two. After your VNet is created, let's just go to the resource and then create a new subnet through the portal here again. Click on subnets on the left pane and then just add a new subnet. Let's call this subnet 2 and give it a slightly different subnet address range. I'm going to leave the rest of the settings as default. And within seconds, another subnet has been created. We can verify this by simply clicking refresh. And there you go. Now let's deploy some virtual machines into these subnets by using some of the material we went over in the previous episodes of this series. We're going to use both ARM templates and PowerShell to deploy these virtual machines. In the Azure portal, open up the Cloud Shell and make sure that PowerShell is selected to open up a PowerShell terminal. For the ARM template, I'm going to upload two files. One file will be the template.json file, and the other will be the parameters.json file. The use of these files is shown in episode 5 of this YouTube series, in case you were interested. Additionally, if you are following along, I will be sharing the content of both of these files in the description below for you to copy into your own JSON file and use. Make sure to upload these files into the Cloud Shell home directory. So click this upload button here, and I have them under my desktop. Seems like only one got uploaded, so let's upload the other one. I guess you have to do them one at a time. There you go. Let's create a variable for the resource group we're currently working in. And then now let's create a new resource group deployment. This command will utilize the information in the two files we uploaded to create our virtual machines. I forgot to mention, if you do plan on copying the files to follow along, the template.json file needs some tweaking to cater to your specific environment. But don't worry, I will highlight what needs to be changed. So in the PowerShell terminal with PowerShell syntax, we'll use new AZ resource group deployment. The first parameter will be the resource group name, and we'll just use that variable. Second parameter will be template file, and it is in our home directory. And the last parameter is template parameter file, and that is also in our home directory. After running the command, it will ask you for a name suffix. I'm going to put this as 1, so when the VM template gets filled out, everything related to my first VM will have 1 at the end. You're going to have to give this a few minutes to deploy your VM. After the VM has been created, I'm going to run the same command to create a second one. This time for the VM name suffix, I'm going to use 2. Both VMs should be created in our episode 8 resource group, so let's go confirm. For now, let's minimize the terminal. Cool. As you can see, both VMs have been created with the appropriate settings and naming conventions. I'm going to quickly configure static public and private IP addresses to the network interfaces used by the VMs. Assigning static addresses ensures that they will not change. In the ARM templates I used, I actually created a new VNet for each virtual machine. So let's click the first VNet. On the left, click Connected Devices, and there should be only one NIC here for the first VM. So let's click that, and click IP Configurations on the left. Now click IP Config 1, and change the assignment to static. And then assign it a static IP address. I'm going to keep it as this. This will assign it a private IP address. After that's done, let's go back to the IP config 1 tab. And in the public IP address settings section, select associate and then create now. That would be done if I didn't already have one created from the template. So here is the public IP address for this VM. Now let's go do the exact same thing for the second VM. On the ipconfig 1 tab for the second VM, we can confirm that the static private IP address is assigned and that it also has a public IP address that's also static. Perfect. Back in your resource group, make sure to note down both the public IP addresses of VM1 and VM2. You can find that by clicking it and copying it right here. As of right now, there are no security measures in place to help ensure that the individuals attempting to connect to my virtual machines are individuals who I actually want to be connecting to my machines. I'm going to configure network security groups to enforce restricted connectivity to my virtual machines. I'm going to first grab the RDP file for my first VM, which allows me to RDP to this machine provided I have the correct credentials to log in. Let's download that right here. If I were to try out this RDP file to initiate the remote desktop session with my VM, as expected, it would fail. This is because public IP addresses of the standard SKU, by default, require that the network interfaces to which they are assigned are protected by a network security group. I'm going to create a new network security group to explicitly allow inbound RDP traffic from the internet and assign it to the network interfaces of both of my virtual machines. Search for network security groups in the Azure portal. Add a new one. Select the resource group and provide it a name. And of course, use the same region you've been using this entire time. Go ahead and click Review and Create. And the creation of a network security group can take a few minutes, so give it some time. After the network security group deployed, jump back to the resource group and select the new network security group. On the left under the settings, click Inbound Security Rules. And then let's add a new inbound rule. Here's where you would get granular with security measures when actually restricting access, but I'm actually going to add a new inbound rule that allows any source to connect to my machines via RDP. And for RDP, the default port is 3389. Protocol it uses is TCP. We're going to allow it, and the priority, we're going to give it the highest priority, which will be 100 in this case. Let's just change the name to keep it a little bit organized, and then add it. After the inbound security rule has been created, you will notice that Azure provides us with a small little warning symbol that indicates that this inbound security rule is insecure, as it does allow external connections from the internet to RDP to our machines. We understand that. We are just using this for demonstration purposes. Now let's associate our network security group with the two VMs. Hop back over to Settings pane and then click Network Interfaces and then add a new associate. And then the two network interfaces for both of the virtual machines should come up. And then just add an association for both. There we go. Both VMs are now associated with this network security group. So, if we hop back over to one of the VMs, try to connect via RDP, download the new file, and then use our credentials to get in, we should have no problem connecting. And there you go. I'm going to leave this open for the next step. Now we're going to configure private DNS zones. Private DNS zones provide a reliable, secure DNS service to manage and resolve domain names in a virtual network without the need to add a custom DNS solution. Using custom domain names helps you tailor your virtual network architecture to best suit your organization's needs. In the Azure portal, search for private DNS zones, and then create a new one. Go ahead and choose your resource group, and then provide a name to the DNS zone. The name I'm going to use is blueroot.ca. Go ahead and review and create. This should take a minute or two. When your deployment is completed, go ahead and move on over to the resource. Now on the left under settings, go ahead and click virtual network links, and we're going to link it to our VNet. Go ahead and click add, and then provide the link and name. Make sure you have the right subscription clicked, and then make sure to choose the correct VNet. Oh, and before clicking OK, make sure you enable auto registration. After the link has been created, go over to the overview and confirm that a record has been created for your VM. Mine will only show my first VM because the virtual network that I chose only contained this VM. Let's hop on over to our VM to verify that the DNS record was auto-registered. In the VM, let's open up PowerShell. And then let's do an NS lookup for episode 8 VM1.blueroot.ca. Forgot the 8. And there we go. Since the output of our NS lookup provides the private IP address of this virtual machine, we can verify that the DNS records were auto-registered. And that's the end of episode 8. If you followed this video, you have created and configured a virtual network, deployed virtual machines into that virtual network, configured private and public IP addresses of these Azure VMs, configured network security groups, and finally configured Azure DNS for internal name resolution. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, or if it helped you even in the slightest, please like and maybe subscribe for future content. Additionally, if you have any suggestions or questions, please leave a comment down below and I'll be happy to help out any possible way I can. I'll see you guys in episode 9, where we will implement inter-site connectivity. Peace!